6 months after the One Strike's demonstration against the hegemony fleet, the political landscape of the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition, and Earth found itself at the center of diplomatic activity that would have been unimaginable. During humanity's early attempts at galactic contact, President Marcus Wells sat in his office reviewing reports from ambassadors stationed throughout Coalition space, while trying to comprehend how quickly humanity's status had evolved. Dr. Helen Carter entered the presidential office, carrying data tablets filled with intelligence assessments and economic projections that painted a picture of humanity's rapidly expanding influence. Mr. President, the latest reports show remarkable changes in galactic commerce and military positioning, she announced while placing the tablets on his desk. 47 civilizations have established formal diplomatic relations with Earth, while 23 others have requested military cooperation agreements. President Wells studied the economic data showing massive increases in trade offers and technology exchange proposals from species that had previously ignored human existence. Helen, what is driving this sudden interest in cooperation? Are they genuinely seeking friendship or simply trying to avoid becoming targets? Dr. Carter activated a holographic display showing trade route maps and military deployments across known space. Mr. President, analysis suggests a combination of both motivations. Most civilizations recognize that humanity now possesses the ability to project military power on a galactic scale, and they prefer cooperation to confrontation. However, many species also see genuine opportunities for beneficial relationships. The President reviewed intelligence reports describing how various alien governments had reacted to news of humanity's growing fleet of Titan-class vessels. Construction on the second and third ships had proceeded ahead of schedule, while the fourth and fifth vessels were taking shape in massive shipyards hidden throughout the outer Sol system. "What about the hegemony survivors?" President Wells asked, while noting reports of scattered hegemony ships seeking asylum with various coalition members. "Are they still considered a threat to human interests?" Helen shook her head while pulling up military assessments from Earth Defense Command. The hegemony as an organized force effectively ceased to exist after the One Strike. Demonstration. Most of their surviving ships have been absorbed into coalition fleets while others operate as independent mercenary groups. The loss of their flagship and command structure broke their military cohesion permanently. Meanwhile, Captain Lisa Stone continued her patrol duties aboard the One Strike, but her mission had evolved from defending Earth to serving as humanity's mobile ambassador to the galaxy. The massive vessel's presence at various star systems had become a powerful diplomatic tool that ensured respectful treatment for human representatives throughout Coalition space. "Captain, we are receiving a priority transmission from the Garden Worlds Federation," her communications officer announced while filtering through the constant stream of diplomatic messages that followed the One Strike wherever it traveled. "Ambassador Flower Song requests permission to board our vessel for formal negotiations." Lisa approved the meeting because the Garden Worlds represented one of the few alien civilizations that had approached humanity with genuine peaceful intentions rather than fear-driven opportunism. "Permission granted. Commander Scott, please prepare the diplomatic suite for our guest, the Garden World's ambassador." Was unlike the aggressive species that dominated most galactic politics, and her plant-like form moved with graceful dignity as she toured the One Strike's massive corridors. The ambassador's translator converted her subtle chemical communications into words that humans could understand. "Captain Stone, the Garden Worlds wish to express our admiration for humanity's restraint in using such overwhelming power. Ambassador Flower Song, communicated while examining the ship's impressive technology. Many species would have used your capabilities for conquest rather than defense. Lisa appreciated the ambassador's perspective because she understood that humanity's approach to galactic politics differed significantly from established patterns. Ambassador Humanity learned long ago that true security comes from strength combined with wisdom rather than aggression. The one strike exists to protect, not to conquer. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from Earth Command, informing Captain Stone that Coalition intelligence had detected unusual military movements in several border systems. Captain New Intelligence suggests that remnant hegemony forces may be planning coordinated attacks on human commercial shipping. The message warned, increased patrol schedules recommended. Lisa activated the ship's tactical displays, showing human trade routes and civilian traffic patterns throughout Coalition space. The one strike could not be everywhere simultaneously, but its reputation for overwhelming firepower had generally discouraged hostile actions against human interests. Atlas, what is our current response time to major human settlements and trade routes? She asked the ship's artificial intelligence while studying deployment options. Captain, at maximum speed. We can reach any location within Coalition space within 72 hours. The AI responded. However, multiple simultaneous threats would require coordination with other Titan-class vessels, currently under construction back on Earth. Dr. Carter briefed President Wells on the broader implications of humanity's rapid rise to galactic prominence. Mr. President, the intelligence community believes we have fundamentally altered the balance of power in ways that may take decades to fully understand. Several major civilizations are reconsidering territorial disputes because they fear human intervention. President Wells understood that great power brought great responsibility, and humanity's actions would be scrutinized by every species in the galaxy. Helen, what recommendations do our strategic planners have for managing this new situation? Dr. Carter activated detailed projections showing various scenarios for humanity's continued expansion. The consensus supports measured growth combined with careful relationship building. We should avoid appearing aggressive while maintaining clear defensive capabilities. Most importantly, we need to establish ourselves as reliable partners, rather than unpredictable threats. The President approved plans for expanded diplomatic outreach combined with continued military development because humanity needed both friends and deterrents to maintain security in a galaxy full of potentially hostile civilizations. Captain Jake Morrison returned to Earth after completing his extended mission at Coalition headquarters, and his reports provided valuable insights into alien reactions to humanity's demonstration of power. Mr. President, most species are still trying to understand how we develop technology that exceeds their capabilities by such significant margins, he reported during his debriefing. Intelligence estimates suggest that reverse engineering attempts have been unsuccessful. President Wells was pleased to hear that human technological advantages would likely persist because maintaining superiority required continued innovation rather than simply protecting existing capabilities. Captain, what is your assessment of long-term galactic stability? Morrison considered his response carefully while reflecting on months of observation at the center of alien politics. Mr. President, I believe we have created a new equilibrium based on respect rather than fear. Most civilizations recognize that cooperation with humanity offers better outcomes than opposition. However, we must remain vigilant because some species may eventually attempt to develop countermeasures. As the first year of humanity's galactic prominence drew to a close, Captain Lisa Stone stood on the observation deck of the One Strike and watched distant stars while contemplating the changes that a single demonstration of overwhelming force had created. The galaxy had learned that humanity preferred peace, but was prepared for war on a scale that exceeded all previous understanding. Her crew had become accustomed to the respectful distance that other ships maintained when encountering the One Strike during its patrols, and the massive human vessel had become a symbol of both protection and warning that shaped behavior throughout Coalition space. Captain, incoming message from Earth Command. Her communications officer announced, "The second Titan-class vessel Thunder Mountain has completed construction trials and is ready for deployment." Lisa smiled as she realized that humanity's position in the galaxy would continue to strengthen as additional vessels joined the fleet. The One Strike had proven that sometimes peace required the capability for overwhelming violence combined with the wisdom to use such power sparingly. The galaxy had indeed held its breath when first glimpsing the human Titan-class ship, but now it was learning to breathe again in a universe where humanity stood as both guardian and example of how great power could be wielded responsibly. News of the hegemony fleet's catastrophic defeat spread across the galaxy faster than the surviving ships could limp home, and within hours, every major civilization had received detailed reports of the encounter. Captain Jake Morrison remained at the Galactic Coalition headquarters, where emergency sessions had been called to address what many representatives were calling the most significant military event in galactic history. Ambassador Krextal stood before the assembled coalition, members with his blue-scaled form trembling slightly as he read intelligence reports that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. Confirmed accounts from multiple sources indicate that a single human vessel destroyed the hegemony flagship Death Symphony without sustaining any damage itself, he announced to the stunned chamber. The Velkari War Master Thane Zulkar clicked his mandibles in disbelief while reviewing tactical data on his personal display. The weapon signature shows gravitational manipulation on a scale previously thought impossible. Our best scientists estimate that the energy required for such an attack exceeds the total power output of most star systems. Representative after representative stood to demand explanations for how humanity had hidden such capabilities from galactic intelligence services, while others questioned whether the reports could possibly be accurate. The idea that a species dismissed as primitive just days earlier possessed technology that made their own militaries obsolete was difficult for many aliens to accept. Captain Morrison sat quietly in his observer section and watched the panic spread through the chamber like wildfire while receiving periodic updates from Earth through his quantum communicator. The message traffic between alien governments had increased by several thousand% as every civilization scrambled to reassess their relationship with humanity. Captain Morrison, Ambassador Krextal, called out suddenly, and his voice carried across the chamber with barely controlled fear. "The Coalition demands an immediate explanation of human military capabilities. How many vessels like the One Strike does your species possess?" Jake stood, slowly, and walked to the center of the chamber where thousands of alien eyes focused on him with an intensity that would have been flattering under different circumstances. "Ambassador, that information is classified," he replied simply while maintaining the calm demeanor that had served him well throughout this crisis. The chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives demanded answers, while intelligence officers frantically updated their threat assessments based on the possibility that humanity possessed multiple vessels of impossible power. Senator Vox Myron of the Christine Hegemony activated his floating platform and approached Morrison with barely concealed hostility. Human. You cannot simply claim military secrets when the balance of galactic power has been fundamentally altered, the senator declared, while his crystalline form pulsed with agitated energy. Every civilization has the right to know what threats exist in their vicinity. Captain Morrison smiled politely, while, considering how much information Earth's government wanted him to reveal, Senator, I can confirm that humanity takes the defense of our territory very seriously, and we have allocated appropriate resources to ensure our security, he replied in the diplomatic language that said everything and nothing simultaneously. Back in the Sol system, Captain Lisa Stone continued her patrol aboard the One Strike while monitoring communications traffic between alien governments and their various intelligence agencies. The quantum channels buzzed with frantic attempts to gather information about human military capabilities and the construction methods that could produce vessels of such magnitude. Captain, we are receiving approach requests from 17 different alien species, her communications officer reported, while filtering through the flood of incoming messages. They are requesting permission to establish diplomatic contact with Earth, and several are offering significant trade concessions, Lisa noted the irony that species which had ignored or dismissed humanity for decades were now desperate to establish friendly relationships. Have any of them explained why they suddenly find humans worthy of their attention? She asked while reviewing the various diplomatic overtures. Captain, most cite humanitarian concerns and a desire for peaceful cooperation, the officer replied with obvious amusement. The Aquatic Confederation specifically mentions their long-time admiration for human artistic achievements, while the Silicon Brotherhood expresses interest in cultural exchange programs. Commander Ryan Scott looked up from his tactical displays with a knowing smile. Captain, it appears that our demonstration has dramatically improved human popularity throughout the galaxy. Amazing how quickly attitudes change when people realize you can delete their flagships from existence. The Artificial Intelligence Atlas provided additional context for the diplomatic developments. Captain Intelligence. Analysis indicates that 43 major civilizations have initiated emergency military reviews, while 27 governments have placed their fleets on defensive alert status. Several species appear to be reconsidering territorial disputes with neighbors who might possess human alliance agreements. Lisa understood that the One Strike had accomplished far more than defending Earth from a single threat. The demonstration of overwhelming human capability had fundamentally altered the galactic balance of power and forced every civilization to recalculate their strategic positions. Meanwhile, at Coalition headquarters, Captain Morrison received an urgent message from Earth Command through his quantum communicator, and the contents brought a satisfied smile to his face. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the assembled aliens, "I have just received authorization to share additional information about human defensive preparations." The chamber fell silent as hundreds of alien representatives leaned forward to hear what the human captain would reveal next, because every government in the galaxy was desperate for intelligence about humanity's true military strength. Earth Command wishes me to inform the galactic community that the One Strike represents our commitment to peaceful coexistence. Morrison continued, while enjoying the focused attention of beings who had ignored him just days earlier. However, we want to assure all civilizations that humanity possesses adequate resources to defend our interests and those of our allies. Ambassador Krextall interrupted with obvious frustration. Captain Morrison, that statement provides no useful information about your actual capabilities. The galaxy needs to know whether humanity poses a threat to established civilizations. Jake considered his response carefully because Earth's leadership wanted to project strength without providing specific details that could be used against humanity in the future. Ambassador, I can confirm that construction continues on additional defensive platforms, he replied with deliberate vagueness. The timeline and specifications for these projects remain classified, but humanity will maintain appropriate defensive capabilities. The implications of Morrison's statement sent shockwaves through the assembled representatives because the possibility that humanity was building more vessels like the One Strike suggested a level of industrial capability that exceeded most major civilizations. Senator Vox Mirren demanded immediate clarification. Human, how many ships are under construction and what is their intended purpose? The Christine hegemony requires specific information to ensure our own security planning remains adequate. Captain. Morrison activated his communicator once more and appeared to receive additional instructions before responding to the senator's demands. I am authorized to confirm that humanity is currently constructing 4 additional Titan-class vessels, he announced to the stunned chamber. Expected completion dates and deployment schedules remain classified for security reasons. The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives realized that humanity would soon possess 5 vessels capable of destroying entire fleets while remaining immune to conventional weapons. Several species immediately began calculating whether their current military forces could survive encounters with multiple human Titan-class ships, and the results of those calculations were terrifying. Ambassador Krextel called for order, while privately wondering whether the coalition had just witnessed the emergence of a new galactic superpower. Captain Morrison, will humanity be willing to negotiate mutual defense agreements with coalition members? He asked, while hoping that friendly relations might provide protection against the growing human military presence. Jake Morrison smiled as he realized that the galaxy's attitude toward humanity had completed its transformation, from dismissive contempt to respectful fear in less than 1 week. Ambassador Earth remains committed to peaceful cooperation with all civilizations that respect our sovereignty and territorial integrity, he replied diplomatically. The message was clear to every alien in the chamber: treat humanity as equals and receive friendship, but threaten human interests, and face the consequences that had befallen Admiral Vexthul and his fleet. The One Strike emerged from Jupiter's gravitational shadow like a living mountain that had decided to travel between the stars, and its appearance sent shock waves through every sensor array in the hegemony fleet. Captain Lisa Stone stood on the bridge of humanity's greatest achievement and watched as 2,000 alien ships turned their weapons toward her vessel with what she could only describe as adorable futility. The human ship stretched 800 kilometers from bow to stern, and its hull bore the scars of construction that had consumed the industrial output of 3 star systems for 5 decades. Every plate of armor had been forged in the heart of dying stars, while its weapons had been designed by the finest human minds working in absolute secrecy. Captain, all systems report nominal operation. Commander Ryan Scott announced from his position at the weapons console, while displays around the bridge showed the targeting solutions for every enemy vessel in the hegemony fleet. The Atlas artificial intelligence confirms lock on all 2,000 hostile ships with multiple engagement options calculated and ready. Lisa nodded while studying the tactical displays that showed the enemy fleet arranged in tight formation, exactly where human war planners had predicted they would position themselves. Communications, are the aliens still demanding our surrender? She asked. with the calm tone of someone who held all the advantages in a negotiation, Captain T. Admiral Vexthul is broadcasting threats and demands for our immediate submission, the communications officer replied, while alien voices filled the bridge through translation systems. He claims that resistance is futile and that we should prepare for boarding operations. Lisa almost smiled at the alien commander's confidence because Admiral Vexthul had no idea what he was facing. The One Strike represented more than just advanced human technology. It embodied 50 years of preparation for exactly this scenario, and every system aboard the massive vessel had been designed with one purpose in mind. Atlas. What is your assessment of enemy capabilities? Lisa asked the ship's artificial intelligence that controlled most of the One Strike's complex systems. The AI responded immediately in a pleasant voice that concealed vast computational power. Captain, the enemy fleet possesses standard galactic military technology with plasma weapons, kinetic projectiles, and antimatter torpedoes. Their combined firepower is sufficient to destroy planetary surfaces, but insufficient to penetrate our defensive systems. Estimated time for enemy weapons to cause meaningful damage to our hull, Lisa inquired while watching the hegemony ships. Complete their targeting procedures. Captain, based on observed weapon signatures and shield analysis, the enemy fleet could maintain continuous bombardment for approximately 400 years before causing structural damage to our outer armor, Atlas replied with mathematical precision. Their most powerful weapons will have no effect on critical systems. Lisa felt satisfaction settle in her chest, because the One Strike had been built to survive exactly this kind of encounter. Human engineers had studied every known alien weapon technology and designed defenses that could withstand anything the galaxy could throw at them. Captain, the enemy fleet is opening fire, the tactical officer announced, as thousands of energy beams and projectiles streaked across space toward the human vessel. The attack lasted for 10 minutes, and during that time the entire hegemony fleet poured everything they possessed into destroying the One Strike plasma bolts that could melt asteroid surfaces struck. The human ship's shields and dissipated harmlessly, while antimatter torpedoes that could crack moons detonated against defensive barriers without causing even minor fluctuations. Admiral Vexthul watched in growing horror as his most powerful weapons failed to produce any visible effect on the human vessel. The One Strike continued its steady approach while absorbing firepower that should have vaporized any ship ever constructed, and its shields showed no signs of weakening under the sustained bombardment. Admiral, our weapons are having no effect, the tactical officer reported with disbelief evident in his voice. The human ship appears to be completely immune to our attack. Every type of weapon in our arsenal has been deployed without success. Vexthul stared at his displays, showing weapon after weapon striking the human vessel and producing absolutely no results. Increase power to all weapon systems, he ordered desperately. Concentrate all fire on a single point, focus everything. We have on one target coordinate. The hegemony fleet responded by directing their entire arsenal at one small section of the One Strike's hull, and for another 10 minutes they maintained the most intense bombardment in galactic military history. The energy output was sufficient to boil oceans, and the concentrated firepower could have destroyed most space stations. When the barrage finally ended due to overheated weapon systems and depleted ammunition stores, the targeted section of the One Strike's hull showed no damage whatsoever. There was not even a scorch mark to indicate that the attack had occurred. Captain Lisa Stone had watched the entire display with professional interest, while her crew monitored the effectiveness of their defensive systems. Atlas "What was the total energy output of that bombardment?" she asked while studying the tactical data. "Captain, the enemy delivered approximately 47,000 terawatts of focused energy over a 10-minute period." The AI responded, "This represents less than 1% of our shield capacity and caused no measurable strain on defensive systems." Lisa turned to her communications officer with a decision that would reshape galactic politics forever. "Open a channel to the enemy fleet. All frequencies, maximum broadcast power." Her voice carried across space to every ship in the Hegemony Armada, and her words were translated into dozens of languages for the various species that served under Admiral Vex Thule. "Hegemony Fleet, this is Captain Lisa Stone of the human vessel One Strike. You have demonstrated your hostile intentions through unprovoked attack on our vessel and threatened our home world with invasion." She paused to let her words sink in while 2,000 alien crews listened with growing fear to the human commander who had just proven that their most powerful weapons were useless against her ship. "You have 30 seconds to begin immediate withdrawal from this star system," Lisa continued, with the authority of someone who held overwhelming military superiority. "This is your only warning. Failure to comply will result in defensive action." Admiral Vex Thule felt panic rising in his chest as he realized that his massive fleet was completely helpless against the human vessel. Everything he had believed about military power and technological superiority had been shattered in the span of 20 minutes. "Admiral, what are your orders?" his tactical officer asked, while the 30-second deadline approached with terrifying speed. Vexthul looked at his displays showing a human ship that treated their most advanced weapons like gentle rain, and realized that pride had led his fleet into a trap from which there might be no escape. "All ships prepare for emergency withdrawal," he began to order, but his words were interrupted by Captain Stone's voice. Time expired. Lisa announced across all frequencies, "Commander Scott, you are authorized to demonstrate human defensive capabilities. Single target. Single shot. Let us provide the galaxy with an educational experience." Commander Ryan Scott activated the One Strike's primary weapon system, and the gravitational lance began charging with power that bent space-time itself around the massive human vessel. The energy buildup was visible from 3 star systems away as matter and energy danced around the weapon's focusing array. "Target the enemy flagship," Lisa ordered while watching Admiral Vex Thule's dreadnought on her tactical display show them what happens when you threaten Earth. The gravitational lance fired, and reality itself seemed to pause as the weapon manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe, the Death's Symphony, along with Admiral Vex Thule and 20,000 hegemony warriors simply ceased to exist, as if the space they occupied had decided they were no longer welcome in this dimension. The remaining hegemony ships stared in absolute terror at the empty void where their flagship had been moments before, while gravitational shock waves from the weapon's discharge disabled hundreds of vessels and sent others tumbling through space. Captain Lisa Stone's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Any ship that has not begun withdrawal within 60 seconds will be considered a continuing threat," she announced to the survivors. "The next shot targets your formation center." The hegemony fleet broke and ran with panic so complete that dozens of ships collided in their desperate attempt to escape, while others jettisoned cargo and weapons to increase their speed of retreat. Within minutes, the most powerful military force ever assembled by hostile alien species was fleeing in terror from a single human vessel, and word of their defeat began spreading across the galaxy through quantum communication networks. Captain Stone watched the enemy retreat with satisfaction, tempered by the knowledge that humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. The one strike had purchased Earth's safety, but at the cost of galactic anonymity. 3 days after the coalition vote, the hegemony war fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, and their arrival sent gravitational waves rippling through local space like stones thrown into a calm pond. Admiral Vex Thule stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Death's Symphony, and watched his tactical displays populate with target information. 2,000 ships had answered the hegemony call for this operation, and they represented the finest military, vessels from dozens of aggressive species. The fleet stretched across space in a formation that could be seen from 3 star systems away, and their combined firepower was sufficient to crack planets and boil oceans. Admiral, all ships report ready for battle operations, his communications officer announced, while data streams flowed across holographic displays showing the status of every vessel in the armada. Long-range sensors are conducting initial sweeps of the inner system. Admiral Vex Thule expected to find human ships rushing to defensive positions around their home world or perhaps attempting to flee to other star systems, but the sensor reports showed something completely unexpected. The Sol system appeared to be empty of military vessels. Tactical. Where is the human fleet? Vex Thule demanded while studying the displays that showed planets and asteroids and space stations, but no signs of organized resistance. Our intelligence reported approximately 100 human warships. The tactical officer worked frantically over his console before responding with confusion evident in his voice. Admiral, we are detecting minimal military activity around the third planet Earth. Itself appears to be operating on standard civilian schedules, with normal commercial traffic between orbital facilities. There are no defensive formations or battle groups visible anywhere in the system. Vex Thule felt a mixture of disappointment and satisfaction because he had hoped for at least token resistance to make this operation more interesting, but the apparent human surrender would make his victory even more complete. Perhaps these humans are more intelligent than the coalition reports suggested. They recognize the futility of resistance against superior forces. The admiral ordered his fleet to advance toward Earth in standard invasion formation with heavy dreadnoughts leading the attack, while smaller ships spread out to intercept any attempts at escape. His plan called for surrounding the human homeworld and demanding unconditional surrender before demonstrating the consequences of defiance through selective destruction of orbital installations. Meanwhile, deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, Lieutenant Commander Amy Patterson monitored the hegemony advance from Earth Defense Command's primary bunker. The facility had been constructed during the early days of human space exploration, when paranoid military planners insisted on preparing for hostile alien contact. Admiral Henderson, the hegemony fleet is maintaining standard approach vectors, Amy reported to the elderly officer who commanded Earth's most classified military programs. They show no signs of detecting our preparations and appear to believe we have no significant defensive capabilities. Admiral Roy Henderson had spent 40 years preparing for this exact scenario, and his weathered face showed no emotion as he watched the alien fleet approach his home world. Estimated time until they reach optimal position, he asked while reviewing tactical data on screens around the command center. 17 minutes at current speed, Admiral, Amy replied while tracking the movement of 2,000 enemy ships across her displays. They are following Predictable military doctrine with heavy units forward and support vessels maintaining standard escort distances. Henderson nodded, because the aliens were doing exactly what human war planners had hoped they would do. The hegemony fleet was positioning itself in a tight formation that would maximize their firepower against planetary targets while minimizing their ability to maneuver quickly if circumstances changed. All stations prepare for Operation One Strike, Henderson announced into his communications system, and his words were transmitted to hidden facilities throughout the Sol system. Final authorization pending enemy fleet position confirmation. Amy watched her sensors as the hegemony ships continued their steady advance toward Earth, and she could see that Admiral Vexthul was supremely confident in his overwhelming numerical superiority. The alien commander had no reason to suspect that human military doctrine differed fundamentally from every other species in the galaxy. Most civilizations built large fleets of moderately powerful ships because such forces could patrol vast territories and respond to threats across multiple star systems simultaneously. The human approach had been radically different because Earth's military planners knew they could never match alien numbers, but they could potentially exceed alien expectations in other ways. Admiral, the hegemony fleet has reached optimal position, Amy announced as her display showed the enemy formation exactly where human strategists had calculated it would be. All targets are within engagement range, and the fleet is maintaining tight formation parameters. Admiral Henderson activated a single communication channel that had remained silent for 50 years of preparation. One strike. This is Earth Defense Command. You are authorized for immediate deployment. Priority Alpha clearance. Granted, execute operation immediately. The message traveled instantly through quantum communication systems to a facility hidden in the shadow of Jupiter's moon Europa, where something vast had been waiting in the darkness for exactly this moment. Captain Lisa Stone received the authorization aboard a vessel so massive that its construction had required the resources of 3 star systems and 50 years of absolute secrecy far from Earth. The hegemony fleet continued its confident advance, while Admiral Vexthul prepared to broadcast surrender demands to the human government. His tactical officers reported normal space conditions with no signs of military activity beyond standard orbital traffic around Earth itself. Admiral, we are detecting a gravitational anomaly near the gas giant Jupiter, his science officer reported with mild curiosity, rather than alarm. The sensors show something large moving in that area, but the readings are inconsistent with known celestial mechanics. Vexthul glanced at the secondary displays showing the outer system because his primary attention remained focused on Earth and the approaching moment of human surrender. Probably an asteroid or debris field disturbed by our arrival. These primitive systems often contain unstable objects. The science officer continued monitoring the anomaly while working to resolve the sensor data into something recognizable. Admiral, the object appears to be artificial, and it is accelerating toward our position at significant velocity. The mass readings are extremely unusual. How unusual? Vexthul asked with growing interest, because anything artificial in this system should have been detected during their initial sweep of human military assets. Admiral, the object appears to be approximately 800 kilometers in length, and it is moving at speeds that should be impossible for something of that size, the science officer replied with growing alarm in his voice. The gravitational signature suggests a mass equivalent to a small moon, but the acceleration profile indicates advanced propulsion systems. Admiral, Vexthul felt the first stirrings of unease as he processed this information, because no human vessel in their intelligence reports approached anything close to such dimensions. "Are you certain of these readings?" he demanded, while bringing additional sensors to bear on the approaching object. "Admiral, I am running continuous verification, but the data remains consistent," the science officer confirmed, while his displays showed measurements that defied conventional understanding. "The object is definitely artificial, and it is definitely approaching our position at combat speeds." The tactical officer joined the conversation with his own disturbing report. "Admiral, the object has emerged from Jupiter's shadow, and visual confirmation is now possible." His voice carried a note of disbelief that made every officer on the bridge turn toward his station. Admiral Vexthul activated the main display screen, and what he saw there challenged everything he thought he knew about human capabilities. The approaching vessel was not simply large, it was incomprehensibly massive, stretching across space like a moving mountain of metal and energy. "Impossible," Vexthul whispered, while staring at the human ship that dwarfed his own massive dreadnought. "As a whale dwarfs a minnow, the intelligence reports indicated primitive technology and minimal military capabilities. How could they construct something of this magnitude?" The communications officer interrupted with an urgent message. "Admiral, we are receiving transmission from the approaching vessel. It identifies itself as the human ship One Strike, and they are requesting immediate withdrawal of all hegemony forces from Sol system." Vexthul felt rage replace his initial shock because no human had the right to make demands of the mighty hegemony regardless of the size of their ship. "Open a channel to all ships. Prepare for immediate attack on the human vessel. All units concentrate fire on target coordinates being transmitted. Now!" The hegemony fleet responded instantly to their admiral's commands, and 2,000 ships turned their weapons toward the approaching human vessel, while targeting systems locked onto what should have been an easy target despite its impressive size. The Great Hall of the Galactic Coalition stretched wider than most cities on Earth, and its golden walls reached so high that clouds formed near the ceiling, where warm air met the cold of space beyond the transparent dome overhead. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the back corner of the observer section, feeling very small among the hundreds of alien representatives who filled the massive chamber around him. The Zephyrian ambassador Krextal stood at the central podium, and his blue-scaled form towered 3 meters above the speaking platform, while his 4 arms gestured dramatically as he delivered his monthly report to the assembled coalition members. His voice carried clearly through the translation devices that every species wore like small jewels behind their various ears or sensory organs. The primitive species from the 3rd planet of the Sol system continues to make amusing attempts at what they call diplomacy, Krextal announced, and his words brought chuckles from many of the assembled aliens. "These humans have managed to achieve basic faster-than-light travel using crude fusion drives that our own children abandoned centuries ago, and yet they believe themselves ready to join civilized galactic society." More laughter rippled through the chamber, and Jake felt his jaw tighten. But he remained silent in his seat, as he had been instructed by Earth's diplomatic corps before his departure. The humans had waited 200 years since first detecting alien. Signals to make contact and rushing into confrontation now would serve no purpose. The Velkari representative rose from his section, and his insect-like form clicked and buzzed as he spoke through his translator. "War Master Thane Zulkar wishes to address the assembly regarding the human question." The translation device converted his complex series of sounds into words that all species could understand. Thane Zulkar stepped forward, and his 6 legs carried his armored body with predatory grace, while his compound eyes focused on different sections of the audience simultaneously. The Velkari have observed human military capabilities through long-range sensors, and we find their efforts pathetic at best. They possess fewer than 100 starships total, and most of these are converted cargo vessels with primitive weapons bolted to their hulls. The War Master paused for effect, while his mandibles clicked in what Jake had learned was the Velkari equivalent of laughter. Our smallest patrol group contains more firepower than their entire fleet combined. Any single Velkari dreadnought could destroy every human vessel without sustaining damage. Their largest warship is smaller than our troop transports. Senator Vox Mirren of the Christine Hegemony activated his hovering platform and floated toward the center of the chamber. His translucent blue form pulsed with internal light as he spoke. The Christine agree with our Velkari colleagues that humanity poses no military threat. However, we must consider the economic disruption these newcomers might cause if allowed to trade freely. Their willingness to work for minimal compensation could upset established labor markets. Jake watched as species after species stood to discuss humanity as if humans were livestock being evaluated for purchase rather than intelligent beings seeking peaceful contact. The ethereal collective representative spoke through waves of controlled energy about human psychological profiles. The Hive Queens of Sector 7 analyzed human reproductive rates and expansion potential. The Silicon Brotherhood calculated human resource consumption and waste production. Hours passed, and Jake listened to every word while taking careful mental notes of each species' attitude toward his people. Some, like the peaceful Garden Worlds Federation, seemed genuinely curious about human culture and philosophy, but they were vastly outnumbered by those who viewed humanity as either irrelevant or potentially problematic. The tone of the session shifted dramatically when a new presence entered the chamber. A sleek black ship had docked with the Coalition station, and its arrival triggered security alerts throughout the facility. The Hegemony had sent an unscheduled delegation. Ambassador Krextal called for order as 3 figures in dark-powered armor strode into the chamber. Their leader removed his helmet to reveal the scarred face of General Vex Mirren, whose reputation for brutality was known throughout the galaxy. The Hegemony represented the military faction that had broken away from the Coalition 50 years earlier, and their arrival meant serious business, honored Coalition members. General Vex Mirren spoke without using the formal protocols, and his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed immediately. The Hegemony brings urgent news regarding the human situation. Our intelligence services have detected human expansion into 3-star systems beyond their home world, and this aggressive colonization threatens established trade routes. Jake felt cold certainty settle in his stomach, because he knew this was not about trade routes. The Hegemony wanted an excuse for military action, and they were creating justification through deliberate misinterpretation of human activities. Furthermore, the general continued, human technology, while primitive, shows dangerous potential for rapid advancement. Our scientists believe that given sufficient time, these humans could develop weapons capable of threatening civilized species. The Hegemony therefore demands that the Coalition authorize immediate intervention before this threat grows beyond containment. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives debated the Hegemony proposal. Some species argued for diplomatic solutions, while others supported immediate action to prevent future problems. Jake realized with growing horror that they were seriously considering. Military intervention against Earth Ambassador Krextall called for formal statements from coalition military advisors, and the reports painted a grim picture for humanity. Admiral Tervek of the Coalition Defense Force estimated that a joint operation would require no more than 500 ships to completely pacify human space. Within one standard month, casualty projections for coalition forces were listed as minimal. The humans cannot possibly mount effective resistance against modern military technology. Admiral Tervek explained to the assembly, "Their weapons are chemical explosives and primitive lasers, while their armor consists of simple metal alloys. Our shields can withstand their most powerful attacks indefinitely, while our weapons can destroy their ships from distances they cannot even detect us." General Vex Mirren smiled coldly as he listened to these assessments. "The hegemony offers to handle this situation quickly and efficiently. We can have 2,000 ships at the human home world within 1 week, and the entire matter will be resolved with minimal disruption to galactic commerce." The debate continued for another hour, while Jake sat in stunned silence listening to aliens casually discuss the destruction of his species, as if planning a minor police action. Some representatives worried about the cost of military operations. Others questioned whether humans might be useful as a slave species instead of complete elimination. Finally, Ambassador Krextall called for a formal vote on the hegemony proposal, and Jake knew he had to act. The coalition was about to authorize what amounted to genocide against humanity, and Earth had no idea this discussion was even taking place. Jake stood up slowly in the observer section, and his movement caught the attention of several nearby aliens who had forgotten a human representative was even present. "Honored Ambassador Krextall," he called out clearly, "I request permission to send a single message to my government before any action is taken." The chamber fell silent as hundreds of alien eyes focused on the lone human among them. Many representatives appeared amused by his audacity, while others seemed surprised that he could even speak their common language. Krextall consulted with other coalition leaders before responding. "Human representative, you may send your message, but understand that no delay will be granted for lengthy negotiations. Your species will have exactly 72 hours to respond to whatever terms the coalition decides to offer." Jake activated his personal communicator and spoke clearly into the device, knowing that his words would be transmitted instantly across the galaxy through quantum communication networks. "Earth Command. This is Captain Morrison requesting immediate deployment authorization for Operation One Strike Priority Alpha activation, required within 72 hours. The message was brief and seemed insignificant to the alien observers, but Jake saw several coalition intelligence officers exchange worried glances because they had been monitoring human communications and had never encountered any reference to Operation One Strike. General Vex Mirren laughed harshly. "The human sends desperate messages to his dying world. How pathetic that they believe secret codes and dramatic names can save them from reality." But Jake noticed that the general's laughter did not reach his eyes, and there was something in the human captain's calm demeanor that made even the most arrogant aliens pause. The way Morrison stood perfectly still with his hands clasped behind his back suggested a man who held cards that others could not see. The vote proceeded as planned with the coalition, authorizing the hegemony to take immediate action against human space. But Jake Morrison continued to stand quietly in his corner, watching and waiting with the patience of someone who knew that the galaxy was about to receive a very educational surprise.